Today we're going to take a look at SciManDan's conclusions as he critiques Bart Sibrel's analysis of the shadows and light in an old Apollo 17 era photograph. Bart Sibrel was a guest on the Danny Jones podcast, and Danny introduced some footage from Everyday Astronaut as a way to counter Bart's argument. This is starting to sound like a daytime soap with a cast of many characters. But stay with me. We'll also observe details that Danny Jones, Sci, Man, Dan, and Everyday Astronaut all seem to have overlooked completely, seemingly distracted by an oversimplified strawman of Bart's observations. Hello, thanks for stopping by. I hope I'm not bombarding you with too frequent a video schedule. Maybe kind of like this guy, SciManDan. He's extremely dedicated. I mean, videos dropping every day, basically. And fixated with one topic, an itch that he simply cannot scratch. Flat earthers, it seems. Flat earther, confidently incorrect flat earther. Flat earther. I mean, almost every title has flat earthers and wild, wacky theories in here. Just really suggests that Dan is probably just a closeted flat earther. Why else would he have such an absolute infatuation? Very crazy stuff. So the video we're going to look at is actually, it's already way back here. It's called The Moon Landing Denier's Best Evidence. This moon landing denier's best evidence gets totally destroyed. Let's take a look.
And of course, if there were two light sources, why are there not two shadows for the astronaut or the rock?
You can even see a hot spot around the top. So if you want...
You can even see a hot spot around the top. Now that's an important point that Bart just made. It's pretty much overlooked for most of the rest of this video. But I think the lighting of that picture is very unusual, and we'll look into it a little more in detail later.
Want to prove the moon landing is fake? You can prove it in one photograph. The photograph on the right cannot be duplicated in sunlight.
We didn't look very hard, Bart, because I found one right here. One shadow pointing in one direction and one shadow pointing in the other.
See, Bart said the photograph on the right cannot be duplicated in sunlight. And that's very important, because this example that Dan is about to show us is in sunlight and has certain characteristics that you would only expect to see in direct sunlight. So far, Bart is on point. We're going to look again a little closer at both photographs in a couple of minutes and see that Bart's point is well justified.
What is different in the moon photo, though, is obviously the rock is quite small. So if you look at the first part of the shadow for the person on the right, you can see it points in a different direction than the shadow for the person holding the camera.
It's supposed to be 20 times brighter with no atmosphere. There's no need for electrical lighting, but obviously the one on the right was lit with electrical lighting. The shadows should be parallel. They're intersecting at 90 degrees from objects 5 feet apart. That would prove it in a court of law, as well as the footage we have of them faking being halfway to the moon, that they didn't go to the moon.
Well, let's take a look at the whole image, shall we? Look at that. The rocks on the left of the image are casting shadows to the right. And as we know, the rocks on the right of the image are casting shadows to the left.
Here Dan is reducing the problem to basic perspective, rather than attending to the unusually close convergence pattern of the shadows that are obviously not repeatable in sunlight, and that look nothing like his previous example that was actually shot in sunlight. He also fails to notice how the light is focused on a hotspot around the astronaut's shadow. Something like that shouldn't be expected. We would expect even distribution of sunlight across the surface.
Exactly what you would expect due to perspective, Bart. Interesting that you cut the left-hand section out of that photo, isn't it?
Our tax dollars went into paying the salaries of the CIA agents that killed the Apollo 1 crew.
On the shadows,
faking it.
you can get shadows to angle toward each other in sunlight.
Well,
it's a fact. You can do it depending on your focal length of the lens and how far away you are from the objects. With one single light source, you can very easily make it appear as if shadows are aiming towards each other.
It's not a light source, it's the sun.
The sun, correct.
The sun.
You can do that with the sun.
Now, absolutely fair play from Danny Jones here for pushing back on that claim by Bart. Lovely to see. I wonder how Bart will try and squirm out of this.
I'd like to see it.
All right,
we
Steve, cue up.
could go outside or whatever.
Yeah.
But and
I got a
again,
video.
you're right about the lens. This is a 50 millimeter lens.
Okay, let's watch this. This is by the Everyday Astronaut. He made a video.
The people who believe we went to the moon.
All right, well, you're the people who believe we didn't go to the moon.
Right.
So this is a fair shake at the shadow argument.
Yeah, let me say this.
Okay.
If they went to the moon, even though it can't be repeated 50 years later by no nation on Earth.
Oh, that sounds like dodging, Bart. We all want to see you watch the video, my friend. Let's skip to where they show him, shall we?
Okay, we're going to watch this video of the Everyday Astronaut discussing the lunar shadows. Let's full screen this because I think this is very compelling.
All we have to do is go out when the sun is fairly low in the sky, about 15 degrees above the horizon, to match the lighting conditions in the photo. Then we need a lens that would be 35 millimeters on a full frame camera, or a 35 millimeter equivalent lens, since the 60 millimeter lens on a medium format camera is equal to about 38 millimeters. So to get the same perspective and angle of view, we'll want to aim for, 35 mil or 40 mil equivalent. Then we just need our camera to be placed roughly mid-chest to match where the Hasselblads were mounted on the A7LB spacesuits. It's pretty obvious that all shadows appear to point inwards towards the center of the photo. The further left or right an object is, the more this is exaggerated. And honestly, this is perhaps one of the most elementary of all things. They appear this way because of perspective, the exact same way parallel train tracks or roads appear to converge. And to prove these shadows are indeed parallel, let's just fly up and look down to confirm that they're indeed straight and parallel.
Boom. Expertly done by the Everyday Astronaut there. Bravo, sir.
Now, ironically, conspiracy theorists claim something exactly backwards. They say shadows appear to converge because it's a close studio spotlight that is roughly 10 feet behind the subject. But the closer a light source is to the camera, the more the shadows appear to line up with the camera's field of view. So the shadows actually become less and less visible to the vantage point of the camera the closer the light source is. Again, this is kind of photography 101 stuff here. Now, it's often claimed that there are multiple sources of light, and that's why the shadows appear to be in different directions. But the reality is that multiple sources of light will produce multiple shadows on a single subject. And actually, the lighting on the surface of the moon would be virtually impossible to replicate in a studio, even with limitless funds and the most advanced solutions in the world, because notice that in all the images, the entire surface of the moon is equally lit. Since we don't see multiple shadows, you couldn't use multiple sources of light to try and evenly light the scenes, let alone mountains that are several kilometers away from the camera.
Okay, let's see Bart's response.
Go back toward the beginning of the video where he's trying to mimic the picture that I showed, where there's that little L bracket that's painted white, which is supposed to represent the rock.
Yeah.
Okay, go there.
Okay.
I'll make that full frame. Okay, the shadow of the little L bracket or whatever it is not intersecting at 90 degrees. It's not pointing at 9 o'clock. In the picture that they claim was on the moon, it is.
Have you seen anyone dodge so much since the film Dodgeball? I don't think you have you? Well, there we go. Let's wrap this one up. A very satisfactory ending to that one. Please do let me know in the comments below what you thought of this video and Bart Sibrel's photo argument with the shadows. As I say, we're all done and dusted for another one. Thanks so much for watching today, as ever.
All right, let's begin by taking a look at this photograph by the Everyday Astronaut. We can see the angles of convergence in all of these objects here. We can see the shadows projected from these objects. And let's just drop down a map to converge the shadow points to a single point. And that is off here in the distance, far above the head of the observer. You can see the shadow right here runs nicely in line. Let's zoom in a little closer so we can follow these lines and make sure everything is working. Looks good. This all looks very good, as you can see. And this is very natural for the kind of light that this photograph was taken in. Low level light, 15-degree angle sun. If we look over here, this is a photograph that Dan mentioned earlier in the video. And again, we see that the focal point, the convergence point for the shadows, is high above the individual's head and off in the distance. Here's a picture of some camels that I came across. And you can see once again that the convergence point is far off in the distance. So the exception to the rule is this picture here, taken on the moon. let's bring in the new convergence map for this image and take out the background just to show you more closely what's going on here. We'll zoom in a little bit. The shadows are all converging pretty close to a point around the top of the astronaut's head. So if we follow the radial lines back, we can see that the patterns are pretty good match for the for all the rocks there. Now this convergence point, this is what Bart has been talking about as being very unnatural and impossible to replicate in ordinary sunlight. And that's where I have to agree with him. If I put the map over this of the convergence point of the outdoor picture taken by Everyday Astronaut, you can see the difference. It's very, very significant. Once again, we'll take this guy out, bring this back in, and let's leave this map on and try to equate, you know, what would we have to do to the sunlight to get these shadows here to converge this quickly? Because obviously they're going nowhere near the same direction. They converge far off in the distance, which is natural, again, for the outdoors like this. So what would we have to do to the sunlight to get these shadows to converge as we're seeing in this picture here? In summary, here's the straw man argument. Lines that are actually parallel can be seen to converge as an effect of perspective. Here's what was overlooked by SciManDan, Everyday Astronaut, and Danny Jones. In NASA picture AS17-136-20744, the shadows converge to a point close to the astronaut's head. In direct sunlight at 15 degrees, the convergence point is much further away because the shadows are actually parallel but only appear to converge to the observer. The shadow convergence angles are not a good match between the NASA picture and Everyday Astronaut's reenactment. Okay, let's move ahead and take a look at light level distribution.
And actually, the lighting on the surface of the moon would be virtually impossible to replicate in a studio, even with limitless funds and the most advanced solutions in the world, because notice that in all the images, the entire surface of the moon is equally lit, is equally lit.
What we're looking at here is an archive of photographs from the Apollo 17 mission, a 70mm Hasselblad image catalog. It's magazine A, and we're getting images between number 22451 and 22606. And what's nice about this particular archive here is that everything is cataloged nicely with a little thumbnail image. And unfortunately, the images, when you do select them, are somewhat low resolution. If we click on this guy, that's the full size of the image. They're reduced in size. However, since this is such a detailed site and they give you such great information, you can easily head over to this page here. Over on Flickr, this is the Project Apollo archive, where you'll find all of the full resolution images to take a look at and to look around at. But I just opened a few of them here that I quickly noticed that the light does not seem evenly distributed. This all seems pretty much artificially lit to me, off the cuff. You know, there's a bright spot in all of these images, clearly right around the shadow here. Again, right around here at the shadow, there's a bright spot. Mountains are quite well lit. Again, bright spot here, close to the top of the shadow. And again, the mountain's quite well lit. So that's a common enough thing. As you dig through the archives, you're going to see that. And there are mountains of pictures over here. So please do go and dig around. Here's a couple of images I brought into the photo editor. Let's make some adjustments here. We'll go to the levels. And this is a good way to sort of augment the light. You bring the light level this direction, bring the neutral tones and low tones up, and you'll start to see how the light is distributed, through the picture, because it's exaggerated. So as you can see, the light really falls off quickly all around a particular hotspot centered around where the astronaut's head is in the picture. Let's try a different image. This one here. Just go to Image, Adjustments, and Levels. Now don't forget, this is supposed to be the moon, that thing in the sky that is so bright it lights, it lights children's books at night if they're reading and they're out camping. I used to read by moonlight myself when there were no lights available and I was camping. So as you can see, without a doubt, there's a bright spot toward the front of this image around the area of the astronaut. So it's pretty easy to see, and we'll do one last one here. Image, Adjustments, and Levels. And again, you can do this for a lot of pictures. Take your time, go through a lot of the archives and see for yourself what's going on. Again, kind of strange lighting in this. Very bright up here, very, very bright, and very dark down here at the lower end of the picture. So I call into dispute Everyday Astronaut's claim that the archive is filled with demonstrations that the moon is evenly lit. Yes, there are examples of even lighting, but it's not entirely consistent.
And thanks to you, the viewer, for watching. Let's wrap it up by saying it is not entirely unusual to see evidence of an artificial sun when it comes to footage produced to represent Earth as a globe. Last year in Antarctica, the elusive 24-hour southern sun was reportedly seen by a group of select individuals. Previous footage of this event were flawed or obviously fake, so this trip was designed to deliver final proof. Unfortunately, they screwed it up and ended up shooting footage that can't be repeated elsewhere in sunlight, among many other bloopers. No new footage from anyone else appeared this year, even though there was a group of marathon runners in the region as usual. The marathon has been an annual event for years, but nobody ever thinks to capture the sun south of Antarctica. Not ALS crew members, athletes, or any of the ground crew associated with the event. You might need to be a Freemason to be allowed to take such footage, who knows? Also, check out this example of sunlight going on and off as seen from the ISS. You won't see something like that on Earth, but it sure happens from time to time in outer space. There are full videos here on the channel for both mentioned sun problems, and check back again. Artemis 2 is coming soon. In the next video, we'll take a look at a memorable moment from the first Artemis mission.